Hey, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com. Today we'll be doing a review of the Dell Alienware AW2724DM. It's an entry-level model in the Alienware gaming lineup, sitting below the AW2723DF. It's a higher-end model than the budget G2724D, which is a very similar monitor but has fewer features, which we'll get into later. This monitor has a 27-inch screen with a 1440p resolution. Plus, it has features you'd want in a gaming monitor, like a 165Hz refresh rate that you can overclock to 180Hz. It also supports VRR to reduce screen tearing. Before we get into the details about the gaming performance, let's quickly look at the design. It looks like other Dell monitors with a black body. It also features some Alienware branding on the back, which are the backlighting zones you can control through the on-screen display. It's very well built, and there aren't any issues with it. In terms of ergonomics, it offers all kinds of adjustments. You can easily place it in many different ways, like rotating it into portrait mode if you want. The stand holds the screen well, and you could fish wires through a cutout in the stand for cable management. While looking at the back of the monitor, let's take a peek at the inputs. Most of them are underneath the back housing, so they can be difficult to access. It has a decent selection of inputs, with 2 DisplayPort 1.4 inputs and 1 HDMI 2.0 port. There are also 2 USB ports underneath the left side of the monitor, so you can connect your devices like a keyboard or mouse. Besides the inputs, it has a few handy features like crosshairs and a dark stabilizer that you could use for gaming. Speaking about gaming, let's look into that. It has a native 165Hz refresh rate that you can overclock to 180Hz over DisplayPort connection. However, it's limited to a max refresh rate of 144Hz over HDMI. It supports all common formats of VRR, including FreeSync, G-Sync, and HDMI form VRR, meaning it reduces screen tearing with any source. One of the main advantages of this monitor is its smooth motion handling. It has an incredible response time at its max refresh rate, and while it's slower at lower refresh rates, it's still fast. It offers 3 overdrive settings: fast, super fast, and extreme, but they don't all perform the same across the entire refresh rate range. This is because the super fast and extreme settings introduce more overshoot at lower refresh rates, but they still perform very well at the max refresh rate. This means you may need to change the overdrive setting depending on the refresh rate you're gaming at. Moving on to the input lag, it stays very low at any refresh rate. This results in a responsive feel, and you won't be at a disadvantage when gaming. Although this monitor is ideal for PC gaming, it's also good for console gaming. It works very well with both the PS5 and Xbox Series X because it has a console mode setting. This downscales 4K images, resulting in a slightly more detailed picture than native 1440p. However, because it doesn't support HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, it's limited to a 60Hz refresh rate with 4K signals, so you'll need a lower resolution if you want a higher refresh rate. As the monitor supports HDMI form VRR, that means the VRR support works with the PS5. Some people online have reported that there are some issues enabling VRR and HDR at the same time at 120Hz with the PS5. However, that was with an older firmware than we used during testing, and we didn't experience this problem. While it's excellent for gaming, you don't get a good gaming experience without great picture quality. Luckily, this monitor offers that, especially in SDR. It has a very accurate sRGB mode, so images look lifelike without any calibration. While this mode is meant for content creators, it doesn't actually lock out any gaming settings like on other monitors. It performs really well if you want to game with it in a bright room, as it gets very bright and has good reflection handling. This means glare isn't an issue, but you'll have problems seeing the screen if you place it opposite a window with direct sunlight. Unfortunately, it looks worse in dark rooms due to its low contrast ratio. Blacks look gray in the dark, and there's some backlight bleed in dark scenes. The monitor does have a local dimming feature that's always on in HDR, but it's limited to 16 zones. It's pretty bad at improving the contrast, and there's a ton of blooming whenever there's a bright object that turns on any of the dimming zones against the dark background. Because it's locked on in HDR, it actually worsens the picture quality. Oddly though, the local dimming doesn't turn on in HDR with our RX 6600 XT graphics card over HDMI, and this is something that a user on our site reported too. We didn't notice the same issue with an Xbox, so it's unclear if this only happens with this specific graphics card. While it has good HDR brightness, small highlights don't pop against the rest of the image. It displays a wide range of colors, and some colors are vivid, but not all colors are bright enough for a truly vivid HDR experience. Overall, its HDR performance is limited, so it's better to use this monitor in SDR anyways. Besides this, it's also important to consider other things like its office performance if you want something versatile. Luckily, it's still very good for working as it has wide viewing angles that keep the image consistent from the sides, which is ideal if you aren't directly facing it, like if you're turned and talking to a coworker. The impressive ergonomics also help with that, so it's easy to turn the screen to show it to a friend or someone next to you. There's one tiny downside with it though, as it has some minor text clarity issues. There's just a bit of color fringing when you use Windows Clear type, which you can mainly notice with our zoomed in pictures. It's harder to spot this on the macro level, and the text clarity is decent, but it just means this monitor isn't as good as other 27-inch 1440p monitors. If you want to use this monitor with a Mac computer like a MacBook Pro or Mac Mini, it actually comes with a USB-C to DisplayPort cable. There aren't any compatibility issues with macOS, and if you're using a MacBook and put it to sleep or close the lid, Windows will return to their original position when opening it again. Okay, now this brings us to the main question. Should you buy this monitor? It has almost everything you'd want in a gaming monitor with a 180Hz refresh rate, a quick response time, and low input lag. It's excellent for PC gaming, and it also has features for console gaming, as it can downscale 4K images and supports VRR with both the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Really, there aren't many downsides when it comes to gaming besides the fact that it has a low contrast ratio, so it's a bad choice for gaming in darkrooms. That said, most options at this price point offer a low contrast too, so you'll have to pay more for better picture quality and excellent gaming performance. Deciding whether or not you want to buy this monitor comes down to comparing it to other options in the same price range. It's a higher end model than the Dell G2724D, which has many of the same specs and performs similarly. The main differences are that the G2724D doesn't have an overclock feature, so its max refresh rate is 165Hz, and it doesn't have any USB ports. It's really a more basic version of the AW2724DM, and it's a good alternative if you want to save money while still getting excellent gaming performance. It even has better text clarity, so it's actually more versatile if you need something for office use. That said, the extra features on the AW2724DM are a nice touch, and its RGB lighting on the back can complement your gaming setup. If you aren't necessarily looking for a budget monitor, but want something in the same price range that's just a bit more polished, the LG G27 850B is another great option. It has better text clarity as well, and it also has a backlight strobing feature to reduce persistence blur, which the Dell doesn't have. It gets a bit dimmer than the Dell though, and it has worse ergonomics, so it isn't better in all areas. Well, that's all for the Dell Alienware AW2724DM. If you want to learn more, check out our written review on the website. The link is in the description below. Ciao.